As the deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz approaches, President Trump warns a whole civilization could die. The U.S. has threatened to destroy civilian infrastructure, but Tehran has asked young people to form human chains around power plants. With limited expectations for negotiations, will the U.S. commit war crimes, and could young Iranians and regional neighbors pay the price? I'm Reza Khanzadeh, and this is the Newsmakers. Iran wants an end to the U.S.-Israeli war, not a ceasefire. And from what we're hearing out of the secretive diplomatic engagement underway in Pakistan, that is not set to happen before Trump's deadline to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. But those involved in indirect talks are now insinuating that there is progress. Iran's ambassador to Islamabad has said Pakistan's efforts are reaching a critical, sensitive stage. But again, we're all left guessing as to what that really means. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes have targeted residential areas, airports, highways, and railroads. The U.S. has hit Karg Island. And Iran's president has called on young people to take a stand, while the IRGC warns it will deprive the U.S. of oil and gas for years if red lines are crossed. Here's a look.
Deal or complete demolition? US President Donald Trump says his Tuesday deadline for Iran to open up the Strait of Hormuz is final. And if not met, he threatens to decimate Iran's civil infrastructure in one night.
Now we'll see what happens. I can tell you they're negotiating, we think, in good faith. We're going to find out. We're getting the help of some incredible countries that want this to be ended because it affects them also. A lot of people are affected by this. But we're giving them till tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern time, and after that, they're going to have no bridges, they're going to have no power plants.
But Iran remains defiant. On Monday, Tehran rejected a 45-day ceasefire proposal conveyed through mediators in Pakistan. Iran insists on a permanent end to the war and seeks guarantees against any future aggression. It also demands a new protocol for the Strait of Hormuz, the lifting of sanctions, and reconstruction payments. In the meantime, the Iranians are bracing for what could come. On Tuesday, an Iranian official called on the youth to gather at the country's power plants in the wake of Trump's ultimatum.
I invite all our youth, athletes, artists, students, university students and professors, tomorrow, Tuesday, at 2 p.m, around the power plants that are our national capital, regardless of any taste or political viewpoint, and belong to the future of Iran and to the Iranian youth. Gather to tell the world that attacking public infrastructure is a war crime.
And an Iranian musician staged a sit-in at Tehran's Damavand power plant, calling for peace.
دوست دارم صدای تار بتونه این بار نقش آفرینیش برای صلح باشه، برای جلوگیری از خاموش شدن چراغ خانه ها.
Meanwhile, Israel continues attacking Iran's energy sites. On Monday, missiles hit the country's largest petrochemical facility. Iran's airports also came under attack. And the Israeli army warns Iranians not to use trains and to stay away from the railway lines, saying that could endanger their lives, adding more to Trump's blatant calls for war crimes. Yet the diplomatic back and forth continues attempts to avert the worst-case scenario. The Iranian ambassador to Pakistan wrote on X that the negotiations are approaching a critical and sensitive stage. Without a breakthrough, the survival of a nation could be at stake.
Well, joining me now to look at what's to come if demands on both sides aren't met are, from Washington, Middle East analyst Reza Khanzadeh, from Tehran, assistant professor at the University of Tehran, Setareh Sadeqi, and also from the U.S. Capitol, Republican strategist and former Republican candidate for Congress, Amanda Mackey. Thank you all so much for being with me. Setareh, I have to start with you. Iran has been rejecting any calls for, a temporary ceasefire, but this deadline is now just hours away, and President Trump is warning that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. If his ultimatum expires, are you scared of what will happen?
Well, I'm not scared of what will happen. Not that I think this guy in White House has any form of sanity. I mean, even American psychologists are referring to his mental condition as a malignant narcissism, but I don't think he even knows what exactly he's putting deadlines for. He has breached his own deadlines and ultimatums several times and extended them. He has already been destroying our infrastructure, and this social media post, the very recent one that you referred to, is not really different from the ones that he had posted previously, where he said that he would destroy the Iranian nation, that to an extent that it would be impossible to rebuild Iran as a nation. And Iranians are following those words, and it has become very clear to them that savage terrorist regime is seeking to bring an end to their thousands of years civilization with unleashed killing spree and the massacre of civilians. But at the same time, Iranians have made it clear from no matter where on the political spectrum they stand, or what religious beliefs they have made it clear that they want to defend their countries. Just today, the Zionist regime and the U.S. regime bombed a synagogue in Tehran, and which you would normally think that's a very anti-Semitic act. But as I said, it does not matter for the United States whether they kill Christians, Jewish, or Muslim Iranians. Just last week, I attended a funeral for a Christian Iranian in Isfahan, and all of us have been unified in our desire to support our country. And we know that ceasefire also means nothing to our enemy. We were bombed during negotiations.
Right, this we do know. But I mean, if citing the unity that you just spoke to, do you then expect, students and young people to heed your president's call then to form those human chains around the power plants that Trump has threatened to target via airstrikes?
Well, they have already started doing that. We even have, for example, famous musicians wanting to perform in front of power plants in order to show that this is about Iran's civilization, and your attack is on us, on the people, and not only on a government. And they are willing to do that. I mean, every single day since the war started, thousands of people have been taking to the streets to show support and say that they're ready to support their countries. A call for registration as volunteers has also been welcomed by millions of Iranians who have registered in that, form as saying that they're ready to protect their country.
Yeah. Let me get to Reza then, because the deadline it's still hours away, but we are hearing of multiple strikes, including on highways, airports, railways, and residential areas. It's hard to build trust on that basis, especially at such a crucial point of what should be negotiations. So what are you expecting from these final hours of diplomatic engagement?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. The expectations for me, and I think for most analysts, is pretty low, because keep in mind that going back months, even before the 12-day war in June, the red lines from the Trump administration and also from Tehran have never really moved to an extent where you would think there's a glimpse of compromise from either side. And there's different reasons why, because for Washington and for Trump, he sees this as one of his great legacies. So if you recall, in the first year of his term, in the in the first year of this term that he's in, he's been talking about Nobel Peace Prize. And then when he didn't get it, he made a comment stating that now that I didn't win, I'm not going to be so peaceful.
Yeah.
And then we see the 12-day war, and then now this. And, Netanyahu has been talking in his ear, convincing him that he will be seen in the history books as a, liberator of an entire, people inside Iran. But then from the Iran perspective, it's a completely different lens that they are seeing this conflict in. They are seeing this as an existential threat. So they will not be compromising really on anything except the point of having some type of reassurance, some type of framework in place where an attack like this never happens again.
Yeah.
So when you have two polar opposite views of this conflict, any type of negotiation is just to show the world that we are trying diplomacy, but the scenes, both countries and both their militaries are preparing for further escalation.
Right. Let me get to Amanda then, because, yeah, there are these kind of key conditions and asks from Iran, including even the right to charge set fees for passage through the Strait of Hormuz, as well as the guarantees that strikes will not resume from the U.S. and Israel, plus even compensation for damages. So do you think it's likely any of those conditions would be recognized in order to secure peace?
Well, it's hard to say, but we know that a nuclear Iran cannot exist. That is the red line for the United States. I think what's really important is that for the Iranian people, and if President Trump's concern is what's happening to the Iranian people, then this regime cannot exist. This regime cannot be in place. You can't negotiate with people like this who believe that death to America for 47 years that they've been chanting is the mantra that the people of their country should follow. And so I think from President Trump's perspective, again, if he is echoing what is important to the Iranian people, it is that this regime is no longer in place. And so these negotiations, ongoing as they may be, ultimately don't take away from the fact that this is a regime that for 47 years has massacred its own people. We saw that play out less than 60 days ago in the protests that happened where over 30,000, some estimates 40,000
we've spoken at length
protesters were
about
killed.
that before. But Amanda, then let me ask you, if you do believe this is about the regime being so horrific and not the Iranian people, then are you comfortable with President Trump threatening to wipe out an entire civilization? That comes down to those very people that you seem to believe the U.S. is fighting for.
Well, I mean, that choice of words, I think, may be misleading because I don't believe that his intent is to eradicate a population. Obviously, all he has talked about has been the Iranian population, the good people, the successful people, these people who deserve to have normal lives, not be fearing from their own government. And so I think maybe the choice of words were wrong if I can interpret it myself. But what he wants to do, and I think what ultimately he means, is that this regime has to be gone. They are not people that can be negotiated with. And every time they have tried to negotiate in good faith, Iran has moved the goalpost. And so, if this is to actually happen, President Trump would certainly want to take the road of diplomacy, but it doesn't seem like that's possible. And certainly from the state media in Iran, what we're seeing is nothing close to a negotiation.
Okay, well, let me ask Setareh about that, because you do have at least Iran's ambassador to Pakistan talking about some progress being made. Do you have faith in your leaders and diplomats to work out some kind of deal that would be beneficial for the Iranian people, but would also stave off the worst of the aggression from the United States and Israel?
Well, I have faith in our diplomats and politicians in the way that they have been fighting back this imperial aggression against Iran's sovereignty. And it's fascinating how Amanda knows better than Trump himself what his intentions are, and the words that he's putting out are not enough to show his intentions. The US regime has been killing more than 500,000 innocent people across the world through sanctions. The US regime has been killing Iranians and has engaged in terror and aggression across the world. Iranians are not the only victims of US regime's terrorism and aggression across the world. We know about Abu Ghraib, we know about the Guantanamo prisons, and we even Americans inside America are suffering from Trump's policies. I don't think anyone is in any position, non-Iranian, to say what Iranian people want. Iranian people have made it very clear that they want to support this government. And if you cannot see thousands and thousands of Iranians taking to the streets every single night ever since the war started to support their country and to support their leaders, then you're missing the point. On the other hand, I should say, I think a lot of Americans are actually against this war, and they have shown that they don't want this war, and they understand it has always been about the plunder and looting of natural resources of another nation. It has never been about democracy. How can it be about democracy when you're bombing civilian infrastructures? You have killed innocent schoolgirls in one day, 170 schoolgirls in one day was your missiles, and you say you're about human lives in Iran. And by the way, the numbers that you've been referring, which are just randomly being increased by US politicians every time we're hearing a different number, started by a shady doctor and a originally Indian blogger. People can read about that, and they have absolutely no basis. But I think at this point, it's very clear to the world that the United States and the Zionist regime have no respect for human lives. As I said, they just bombed a synagogue in Tehran.
Yeah. Let me get back to Reza then, because, well, if you'd like to respond, because I know you're Iranian as well. There's definitely a divide in the opinions of the Iranian people, not just within Iran, but of course with the diaspora as well. And I have to bring this in, Reza, we're limited on time, but given, and I'm going to describe it as the madness of Trump's rhetoric alone, and how mostly unilateral actions now have actually destabilized the global economy for everybody. I have to ask about the allies and non-allies of the United States, especially those involved in these talks right now. Are they considering then a future without the dominance of the United States? The fact that the midterm elections are approaching, which may handicap Trump in a sense, as well as even if he's just out of office in 3 years, if that's the end of his term. What are people considering from the outside about where the United States is going politically as well?
Yeah, so I think outside of Western media, North America and Europe, the vast majority of the countries, if you follow their own local news, you see that there is a strong support for Iran. Not so much the regime itself, but just what the country is doing, how it is standing up to the United States and Israel, because again, the vast majority of the world, especially the global South, sees the US and Israel as the bully of the world. Well, the US is the bully of the world, and then they see Israel as the bully of the Middle East. And no one has really stood up to them, or specifically Trump. And now we see Iran doing that. And then with your question as far as the allies of the U.S., they are seeing a pivot. So there's been this pivot where we are in a more, we are kind of shifting away from a unipolar world into a multipolar world. And as the years have been going by, and now with Trump's second term, and we have 3 more years left, that shift is going to increase even more rapidly. And most of U.S. allies are seeing that, and they are starting to diversify their own political investment, if you will. So it's no longer just on the United States. We've seen this with Ukraine, how they are talking to many other countries, outside of Europe and America, and even within, the certain parts of Asia, Pakistan and, Saudi Arabia, cutting a deal as well. And the BRICS also trying to compete more, even with the toll system that, Iran has at the Strait of Hormuz, where they're asking the ships that are, or not asking, but essentially demanding the ships to pay in yen. That is their attempt to shift the global dominance on the U.S. dollar away from it as these weeks go by with this conflict. Because as you noted earlier in the program, there is an attempt, there is a possibility where Iran could completely control the Strait of Hormuz for years to come, and that would really destabilize the global economy. And most of U.S. allies are seeing that, and they're not just going to sit and wait and see what happens. They're going to start to diversify, and we are seeing that now. And going back to a few of the comments that are made as far as what's going on inside Iran, we have 93 plus million people in that country, so it is impossible to say what they're all thinking. And both the other panelists are right in a certain extent. They both make good points, and we have to keep in mind that it's just there's so much complexity, and we have a new generation being introduced into this conflict, Generation Z, that we haven't seen in years past.
Yeah.
With like the 2009 Green Movement and even the Women Freedom Life Movement. But these most recent protests, Generation Z is almost in the driver's seat now as far as what they want. And that's going to be the future of this country. Whichever direction that generation goes, I think that'll be the direction of what these protests are going to look like in Iran once this conflict is over. So,
yeah. Let me get back to Amanda, though, because I want to backtrack on what Reza had said earlier in his answer, in that in many ways, and many people are saying this, Amanda, even if you don't believe it, the U.S. has lost a lot of credibility and a lot of respect, and too many of its allies and non-allies are almost determined now to make sure it's no longer at the helm as it was before, because they do want to see this multipolar world order rather than the U.S. being able to call any of the shots. Are you comfortable with that, the U.S. loss of credibility and respect on the global stage?
Well, I think that President Trump has done a lot to try and, uh, you know, build peace deals in the Middle East and make the Middle East a safer place. That's certainly what he believes he's done. It's certainly what he's touted as his successes in his first term. You even have some people in the Republican Party that are saying, I don't understand why he's so concerned and focused on the Middle East or outside the United States when he should be focused on domestic policy. But that has been, in his view, certainly a signature achievement and something he believed. I think, as Reza said, that he believed that he should have won a Nobel Peace Prize for. But the bottom line is the people of the United States do see what Iranians are suffering through. And yes, a country of 90 plus million people, but still 80% of them, it is estimated, want to see this regime gone. There is the 20% that have to, follow the line of this regime. And certainly that's, what Setareh has been saying and talking about, or she's been parroting the propaganda from this regime. And so, to say that Iran has not massacred its own people and saying the United States somehow has massacred Iranian people, that's not true. The people of Iran have suffered under this regime, and that's why they want to see it go. And that's why you see these protests that are being led throughout the world in support of what President Trump has done. When I spoke to my cousin in Tehran a couple weeks ago, because of course communication has been silenced by this regime, it was a few weeks ago when I spoke to him, and he said, whereas in Iran, in Israel, people will go hide in bomb shelters, we see bombs and we go out and record it because we believe, wow, this may be our opportunity to get out from under this regime. So the people of Iran have suffered enough, and that is what the goal of this has been. And so I'm not putting words in President Trump's mouth. I'm just giving you my interpretation based on everything that he has said before, prior, and daily about the Iranian people and the plight of the Iranian people. I believe he's trying to make life better for them in Iran, but this regime has to go, and that is what he believes.
Okay, Setareh, we only have 1 minute left, and I really needed to ask you about the IRGC's latest threats, really, that if Trump goes ahead with what he's threatened, they've said, first of all, that the United States and its allies will be deprived of oil and gas from the region for years to come, and most importantly, that America's regional partners should also know that until today, we have exercised great restraint and that neighbors will suffer. Does that concern you, that to know that Iran is ready to go after militarily its neighbors in the region? We've seen some of it already. Do you think more should come if that's the only way to fight the U.S.?
Well, Iran wants to fight back the U.S. regime of Epstein pedophiles that have, for many years, with impunity, carried out terrorism and massacre of civilians in this region. And by nationalizing the Strait of Hormuz, but also punishing for the first time anyone who is complicit in U.S. crimes and terrorism against the people of the region, Iran wants to show that this imperialist power that has been involved in terrorism will be punished, and there will be an end to their adventurism and militarism in this region. And Iran has made it clear, even before the war started, while we were negotiating and we were bombed negotiations, Iran made it clear that if the United States and the Zionist regime, and this time it's going to turn into a regional war. And so far, Iran has practiced restraint. And from now on, when civilian infrastructures are being targeted, Iran is going to respond and make it clear that this is going to be very costly for the United States regime and the Zionist regime to launch any attack on Iran in the future.
That will unfortunately have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists so much for being with me, and our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.